Get ready for your unofficial dental hygiene podcast. These are the tales of two hygienists, one East Coast RDH and one West Coast hygienist. Listen as they tackle the profession of dental hygiene with humor and enthusiasm. Now, please join Michelle Strange and Andrew Johnston as they tell you a tale of two hygienists. So everyone, welcome to this podcast. And we have a fun one today with Linda Hirce, who is an RDH, and she knows all there is about baking soda. I am so excited to talk with you. Welcome to the podcast, Linda.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I'm so happy that we had a chance to speak with you before we even interviewed, and just like some of the fun stories that are coming our way for this hour is going to be, I'm just so happy for our audience. This is going to be great. You have such an interesting background and history, and your stories are great. This is going to be awesome.
Thanks. That's what happens when you've been doing it a long time.
Well, maybe let's start there, though. Let's start with your background. Tell our listeners who you are or where you're from.
Okay. I am out here in just outside of Boulder, Colorado. I moved out here about 26 years ago from New Jersey. I started my career early in the 1970s. I was a University of Pennsylvania graduate, and I started almost immediately into a periodontal office, very progressive periodontal office, and worked there for 27 years before I moved out here.
And that's so interesting. Do you find that having that background in perio has made you a different type of clinician than you thought you were going to be?
It really has. And it's, I think one of the biggest things that I take away, and I tell every student hygienist, go watch perio surgery. You don't know what you're doing until you see that tissue flapped open and you go, oh, that's still there.
Yeah.
So one of my jobs with the periodontist, when I started having carpal tunnel, when we started wearing gloves and masks, was to be the surgical assistant. And it was amazing. It was just amazing. It should be a preliminary for hygienists.
You do like a mini residency into perio for a little bit?
No, really. And I was a coordinator for a study group. It's part of the Seattle study group. And we were one of the second study groups to join in. So I got to see a lot of dentists from around the country, and especially in my area back there.
Wow, Linda, we've really had very similar careers, because I was also a hygienist in a perio practice and a surgical assistant, and I could not agree more about seeing it flap back and just really understanding root morphology. And when you just roll the curette just slightly a little bit more in your fingers, how you really adapt that cutting edge to, that root concavity on like the first premolar or something. It really changes your perspective.
Absolutely.
And I know that we have like this whole agenda of getting into, the baking soda and what Arm & Hammer has to help us as clinicians with. But before we go into that, I just have to ask both of you guys this question, because someone who has never been in a true perio situation, with my office, it's always been refer out. I know that there are a lot of us in these general practices who, upon hearing things like that of everyone should have to go through this, should they feel embarrassed that they aren't able to be clinically as good as the rest of the perio office? I mean, I feel like that's what we feel, though.
Chime in too fast on this, Linda, but my personal experience was in perio, I honestly didn't do a lot of scale and root planing. I did a lot of maintenance, or I did scaling and root planing that had already, it was like the second round, because they did it in the general practice. There was something that didn't heal. There was something that didn't happen. Probably a lot of times it was systemic and also occlusion. And then they came in. I really didn't even know, I didn't remove very much tenacious calculus until I went back into private practice.
I think that's the difference now. I recently, I'm retired from clinical just about a year or so, and before COVID, so it had nothing to do with that. But I substituted for a perio office, and they did no scaling and root planings, the hygienist. It was all done by the periodontist. And I think that was the difference in the office that I was really blessed to work in, that I was the first person you saw after the initial consultation. And I'll get into it a little bit, but, how I got into baking soda was really through the research that they were doing at the time with baking soda and peroxide. Dr. Paul Keyes was a periodontist looking at non-surgical treatment. And we sort of accepted it and started in with phase microscopes and all of that. But I don't know how much you want to hear.
We want to hear anything you want to share. I think as long as it's helpful.
But we had an assistant who was basically trained as a preventative teacher, educator. And we would take scrapings from the teeth and look under a phase microscope prior to treatment, and then every week that they came in, looking for that decrease in modal rods, looking for the decrease in certain bacteria. And it was really Dr. Keyes' research that led to discovering what bugs did what. And that just blew me away. And of course, his technique was mixing baking soda and peroxide together like a paste, putting it in your mouth. It totally relied on compliance from the patient, which we know they are so compliant, right?
Right.
And also absolutely terrific scaling and root planing. Obviously didn't make much. We still had to flap teeth. Sure. But that was my introduction to baking soda. And
so when you heard that was, so they'd already been doing this prior to you coming on board, or this was kind of a rolling invention as you were there?
I was already working there. And Dr. Keyes, his research and his technique came out about the early 1980s. So I was already practicing for 7-8 years.
Was it, was it weird to think about it? Like, this is something so simple, like that obviously can't make a difference.
Yeah, it was. And the ideal that, of course, everybody just wants to take a pill or do the surgery, get it over with. But the bacteria came back. And I totally believe that the phase microscope, showing the patient to look in that microscope and see things really moving, is a powerful tool. It's one thing to show them on the video or on a computer, but when you take it out of their mouth and put it right on and show them, they freak out. And then when they see that they start doing, way better home care, and the next time they come in, they want to know. We also did caries detection with saliva. And that was the first thing. Can I spit into the tube? I want to know how it's going to go this time.
Wow, that's so progressive. And because now I'm doing those things, and it's 2020. Mm-hmm. I definitely didn't do that 7 years ago. And you're doing it how long ago?
Well, this was the early 1970s. And I think about that now. I'm involved in some laser certification, and I think, gosh, if I had a laser back then to kill those bugs with the light, So it is sort of a full circle.
So you guys, you implemented this regimen, and then, as we discovered, this has been since the 70s. What have you seen as far as the hygiene community's acceptance, like initially when you were explaining this to your colleagues, and then up until now? Like, how has everyone perceived baking soda in general?
Well, I would say I started working with Mentodent and did conventions and education at the booths, the national convention booths. And of course, the biggest Mentodent was baking soda and hydrogen peroxide. And it was then sort of melded into the Arm & Hammer products of baking soda. But the perception, the number one perception is it's so abrasive to teeth. And I think that comes from people using it they're used to it cleaning. They're used to, using it to scrub or whatever. But once you sit down and you show them the principles, it's really not. Baking soda right out of the box is an RDA of 7, which I know we'll probably talk about the RDA.
Yeah, I think that's coming up. But you are right, though, because, even just this past weekend, we had cooked something we moved to a new house. We have this brand new grill. It's a gas oven. We weren't used to doing it, and we burnt some of the kind of the marinade that was on it, and we used baking soda to clean off that tenacious stuff that gets kind of baked on there. And so it's not out of line for them to think, oh my gosh, this is a really abrasive product, but it's really not. Mm-hmm. I get where they're coming from, for sure.
Well, there's more to baking soda than just the scrub of it. It's actually, in our toothpaste, it's basically, in the Arm & Hammer products, it's a dual action. Part of what you were describing is it cuts the grease. Okay? The other part is it is mildly abrasive at start, but then it goes into the grease cutting end of things. And it'll put out a flame in case you're grilling too close with your apron or something.
So it's so funny because when we chatted the other day, you mentioned that Southerners tend to use a lot of baking soda. And after that, I was thinking of all the ways that I've used it. I put it in my shampoo. I have scrubbed my face with it. It's pretty much in every bathroom, every kitchen, every refrigerator. It was something I was taught to put fires out on the stove. I was just like, oh my God, I really have used baking soda for just about, and I'm talking I buy the Costco giant bags. There's one in every bathroom, every kitchen. I use it for everything.
The last Thanksgiving, I was at my brother's for Thanksgiving, and I was opening this big jar of olives with, of course, the olive oil that slipped out of my hand onto the floor under my brand new suede boots. And it was just the toe of the shoe, and I took it and just stuck it into the box of the baking soda. Next day, nothing there.
Wow. It's so versatile.
It is amazing.
There's some real chemistry. Yeah.
And then, so to bring it back, though, we've added it to toothpaste now. And, my assumption is there's a reaction that's happening for the plaque removal. Same principles applying to taking the stuff off my pan?
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, the baking soda, why it works for your grease or your fire or whatever, is it's raising the pH and it's cutting that grease. So in our mouths, what do bacteria love?
Acid.
Acidic and no oxygen. So the two main ingredients in most of not all, but some of the baking soda Arm & Hammer toothpaste is peroxide and baking soda. The toothpaste itself, just coming out of the tube, is already basic. So a lot of people don't think about how acidic their toothpaste is right off the bat. And it's a natural product. It's mined right here in the United States, not far from me. And as you can see, it's been used for years and years. I think it was something 1911. They were selling it in little bags, just baking soda itself. For whitening teeth.
Wow. Yeah. And that's how I use it.
So one of the things about baking soda that people don't think about, sure, they think about it cleaning, but it actually has this, what we describe as a dual modality of working. One is raising the pH. Two is the abrasivity at the very beginning. Because it's a salt, it dissolves. It doesn't stay abrasive through your entire brushing. And that's one of the difference of baking soda as an abrasive as opposed to hydrated silica or some of the others. So it's that mechanical and also the biological. So the baking soda dissolves and actually reacts into the plaque biofilm, raising the pH. Okay, bugs like it acidy. So it raises the pH in the biofilm, disrupting the growth of the bacteria. You know, it's one of the things that I remember from years ago, Dr. Kai saying it should be listed as an active ingredient because of the way it is disruptive to the bacteria.
Mm-hmm.
Really should.
So there was a great, very informative journal, the JADA, Journal of American Dental Association. I was out in 2017, November issue, and they did 6 comparative studies in that journal. One was on plaque removal, the mechanical end. The other was on neutralization of the biofilms and the acids. The other was baking soda and the synergistic energy it really has with peroxide. So the two together are better than either alone. There was another one on stain removal and whitening. And then the last journal article was on abrasivity. Yeah, one of the quotes in there is the results of the literature in this study shows that baking soda containing dentifrices are ideal candidates to be considered as a universal. You know, not all our patients are created equal. And yeah, there are times when you need a prescriptive toothpaste or someone needs this kind or that kind. But a great universal toothpaste, baking soda. And really look at the inactive ingredients on the box. Usually it's only on the box of toothpaste. Will list the inactive ingredients. And what is their mechanical abrasive? Usually it's the first or second ingredient. So is it hydrated silica, which we all know is sandy water, basically? Or is it baking soda? Now, some will say they have baking soda in it, but is it 5% or 6%? We have, I think the least is 35%, and then it goes up to over 60% baking soda.
Yeah, I like when they always try and sneak in that. We have xylitol in our chewing gum, and it's just like the very, very last ingredient, but it's like xylitol's big print on the front. What's important that you mentioned that, though, I mean, because I feel like, patients need to be looking at this, but do you feel like patients really have a baking soda toothpaste on their radar? Are they aware that this is something that's important for them and that's out there?
Well, as Michelle was saying before, when we go to different areas of the country, in the South, they know about baking soda. Yeah. They will say, oh, my grandmother used to use that or whatever. I don't think hygienists, as I said before, have a real understanding of the benefit of baking soda. This dual action, the idea that it is shifting the biofilm from a more acidic, to a less pathologic for the bacteria to grow in. And also, of course, that has fluoride. We all know fluoride is basically, I always described it as the magnet that pulls the calcium and phosphate into the tooth. So you have, there are a couple variants of our toothpaste, the Bright and Strong, which has a liquid calcium in it. So you're getting remineralization, not acid attacks on the teeth. You're providing fluoride and you're raising the acidic level in your mouth.
And, here in the South, as I mentioned, that I've been using baking soda, and my way, or the reason I use it, is to buff away the stains from my 2 favorite drinks, which are coffee and red wine. So I'm using it quite a lot. So how does baking soda toothpaste stand up to stain removal and whitening?
Really well. As I mentioned before, it's sort of that oil and water property, the idea of the baking soda neutralizing the oil of it. And also, the baking soda has like a buffering, creates a luster on the tooth. Okay. I remember having a hygienist that would only use coarse Profi Paste, and all her patients had so much stain. And I explained to her one day that you're not polishing the teeth, you're actually scratching, micro scratching. So the baking soda actually helps to reduce that micro scratching that we get from, acid attacks, things like this. So a smoother luster, just like a quartz countertop, isn't going to accept stain like a wood one would. So
I love that explanation. That makes so much sense.
That was perfect
in my little brain here.
Well, when you think about it, if plaque is what's attracting the stain or holding the stain, and the baking soda is actually going in there and disrupting that film, that biofilm, well, you're not going to have the matrix for the stain to get into. And yeah, sure, sometimes we need coarse baking soda, if you're really, but then follow it up with a nice smooth luster type of polish. So it really provides a real gentle, natural whitening. And that's one of the things, a lot of patients or even hygienists will say, oh, my dentist said, don't use whitening toothpaste. One of the articles that I was mentioning before in the JADA was the idea of whitening and bleaching. And there are two different concepts. You think of bleaching as a chemical reaction to the tooth surface. Okay, a whitening is more of a perceived difference in either a lessening of the stain, a shinier tooth that will reflect light more. So that's something, you really have to ask your dentist if he's saying don't recommend whitening toothpaste. What is the whitening property of it? Mm-hmm. Is it a hard abrasive scratch kind of thing to remove stain? Or is it something that is, more natural, like a baking soda? And that's why, baking soda toothpaste is it's much more effective in stain removal and thus, whitening than non-baking soda. Even though if it would be said that they're whitening toothpaste. So
let me ask you this then. I mean, do you feel like there's certain patients or patient bases that would benefit more than other patient bases?
I think, as hygienists, I always said, I love my job because I'm a detective. And you start that with, whether it's the health history, oh yeah, now I have GERD, now I'm taking hormone replacements and my mouth's dry or whatever it is. It's the detective work that we really do. That then when you do an oral exam, you look at and say, oh yeah, there's a lot of erosion. Yeah, there's no saliva in here. That's what triggers you to start asking the patient, what kind of toothpaste do you use? What kind of brush do you use? What's your favorite drink? All these kind of things that we should be asking, and then using the research and all the CE courses that we've taken to help our detective work, to then do our dental hygiene assessment and our dental hygiene, diagnosis for problems, and then become the educator. Sam, I know you're an ultra runner here in Boulder, and the humidity's at 12%. And and all you eat is vinegar on salads. You're going to have a lot of erosion. You need something that's going to help lessen the acidic attacks on your teeth, and also to help you just, not add more to it with a more abrasive toothpaste, but something that's going to be gentle and help stop this erosion.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like we need to evolve as hygienists. I think, at the beginning of your career, you're so focused on the procedure, right? You're like, we need to, health history is these questions, but then we don't ask those follow-up questions and the follow-ups to the follow-up questions. And then we're like, oh, hey, all of a sudden we have more time in our appointment because we've gotten better about sequencing, the hygiene appointment. There's a fine line between what that one person call it, Michelle, a chat and polish hygienist versus a detective like you're talking about. And listeners, if you are not listening to another thing of this whole entire interview, like this is for me one of the key takeaways. Figuring out how to really partner with your patient, asking them the appropriate questions, and getting to know them so that you can recommend something that's specific enough for their needs. Because I feel like we're missing that point a lot of the time.
Well, and it's hard to do. You hear how rushed you are, and now all the PPE, nobody can hear you, nobody can, but you really need to take, I don't care if it's while you are working, just saying, I'm seeing a lot of gum recession here. I'm seeing a lot of, chipping to the front teeth. And that's when you start to work in your mind. Is he a nail biter? Is he, he's only brushing on one side? Is he using a manual brush with hard bristles? These are the kind of things that then you can just, mention, if not while you're working, if not expecting an answer, at least to get the wheels working in your patient's head. So that when you do sit them up and you have 5 minutes while you're waiting for the dentist to come in or whatever you can talk about it. How much toothpaste do you put on a brush? Is it just like the show on the commercials?
Like that, as long as the toothbrush is, and then that little tiny Q-tip, whatever on the curly Q on the back.
The dippity-doo, the dippity-doo on the end. But I think it's, I think the basic, people want things more basic, and I think we're finding that now. I mean, people are tired. They're tired of all these ingredients. Or you go to the grocery store. I would just say, use Arm & Hammer toothpaste. I know right out of the tube, it's going to lower the acidicness in your mouth. It's going to be less abrasive. And we can talk a little bit maybe about the Essentials toothpaste, baking soda toothpaste, which is now even a more natural line of our family with no sodium lauryl sulfate, no dyes, no preservatives. It has stevia, there's no artificial sweeteners. So that we just love. The hygienist group that I work with, we just said, finally we have not only the natural ingredient of baking soda, but also some of the other things that we've been asking for. So yeah, you look at every patient, you look at their needs, you look at their habits. Are you kissably, sweet kind of thing? Well, we ain't doing that now.
Right. Let's pivot back to part of the conversation we had earlier, RDA, right?
Okay.
Let's, if you don't mind, just explaining what RDA is and kind of what we're looking for and where Arm & Hammer's line of products falls in on that.
Okay. There's the RDA is a relative dentin abrasivity. It's a standardized measurement that was actually started in the mid-70s, 1970, 75, I think, by the ADA, American Dental Association. And it was basically to measure the effect of the abrasives in toothpaste. And they used a block of dentin, and it was 100,000 strokes going over this block of dentin with the other abrasive, or each of the abrasives on the block. And what dug in, or how many millimeters into the dentin. So it's recognized as the threshold of safety in abrasiveness. The ADA's threshold of safety, meaning the highest level that you can get, it's a scale from 0 and it goes over 250. The ADA says that 250 is the maximum that you should go. The FDA says 200. So it comes back to that, as I said in the beginning, right out of the box, baking soda comes in at 7. And the dental refined baking soda that's in our toothpaste, that's put into the toothpaste, comes in anywhere. I would say our scales, I think the highest is 135. And that toothpaste, which is the Bright and Strong, has a calcium in it for the liquid calcium. So when you're thinking about abrasives, sure, some are abrasive for a need, but you have to think about the size of the particle, the shape of the particle, the abrasiveness that you're using. Is it jagged? Is it round? Is it smooth? The hardness, will it dissolve? Okay. Is it something that after a certain amount of motion will dissolve because it's worn away? Or does it just dissolve like a salt, like baking soda? So I always think about it, people say, oh, well, it's safe if it goes up to 250. Well, yeah, when you think about, I've used this analogy so many times, but you're driving on the interstate and the speed limit is 60 miles an hour. Okay, you're not supposed to go over 60. You can go under 60. But you have to take into consideration, going back to thinking about the patients, are you driving on a wet sidewalk? A wet street? Is it sunny and bright? Is it icy or snowing? You're not going to go 60 mile an hour if it's, snowing and icy and you're having black ice on the road. So it's that same idea. If someone has great saliva, they are using a soft powered brush, okay, which comes down to the vehicle. Is your vehicle, are all the wheels aligned? Are they all hitting on the same, the pavement? Do you have a heavy load in your trunk? Are you really scrubbing those teeth? So when you think about the vehicle that you're using, the speed limit, and the road surface, is your road already full of potholes? Is it really thin layer of black tar over stones or whatever? Besides the road, the kind of speed limit, the road that we're driving on, it really depends on the type of driver. And that was one of the other things I wanted to say was, do they have a lot of saliva? Are they heavy-handed with brushing or squeezing out too much toothpaste? Do they have a full mouth? Are they driving a vehicle that's full, veneers? The Tesla. Or, so you have to take all that into consideration. So safe at 250, yeah, that's fine. But I would rather use something that has a less abrasive right off the bat. And as I said, I think most of our toothpaste come in the range of 80s, 60. But sure, you can go up to 250.
I think that is probably the best way. I'm definitely going to start explaining that to my patients that way. Just taking into your environment, into consideration your environment, I should say, and the speed limit. And I have always said, gosh, we really have to think about the combination of those high abrasive toothpaste with the type of toothbrush. And so just describing it as the vehicle, gosh, that's so fantastic. So thank you for that.
But the problem is, though, our patients can't be expected to have every professional know every RDA value of every single toothpaste that's out there, right? I think that's not we never hardly talk about it as a profession ourselves, but shouldn't there be somewhere where they could find this, Linda? How do our patients figure this out?
Well, on our website, Oral Care Pro, there is, we have CEs, there's research, and in there's some literature. One of the conventions, I think in Chicago, the last one we attended, a hygienist from Canada said that it is listed in Canada on their toothpaste. And I have never heard that. And I've researched to try to find that, if that's true, and I haven't been able to. But you're not going to find it. So what are you going to do? You're going to look at the inactive ingredient and figure out what is the main bulk of this toothpaste. Baking soda, if you think back to your chemistry, the Mohs hardness measurement, baking soda comes in as hard as Denton. Okay, so it's not very hard. It's not as hard as enamel. So that creates the gentleness of the toothpaste. Safe is safe. I would just rather have something that I know is more gentle. I have a lot of recession. I have a lot of Denton. And if baking soda is as hard as Denton, it's not going to harm it. Or abfractions.
Well, Michelle, I mean, I don't know if this is actually maybe along the same lines or not, but, Michelle talks a lot about implant maintenance. And Michelle, you said something a long time ago, I don't know if it's still true, but, as like metals, when we're using our instruments for implant maintenance, that sounds very similar. Use something that's harder than the metal that's for the implant, it's going to scratch it. It's going to be detrimental.
Exactly. Absolutely. I can't believe you remembered something I said. Good job.
Look, few and far between. Few and far between.
Yeah. You two are so lucky. You're so lucky to have each other.
She is lucky to have me. You're absolutely right about that.
We agree.
So one of the other things, is we're talking about abrasivity, and does somebody have a lot of recession, and they have, full mouth veneers or something. The other thing to take into consideration is, are they one that has a lot of mouth sores? I get this all the time, they'll say. I have this canker sore. I get this all the time. So if you have a patient with aphthous ulcers, first thing that I think of is something without sodium lauryl sulfate. And that's part of our new essential lines of baking soda toothpaste, which we introduced this year with, again, the no sodium lauryl sulfate, no parabens, preservatives, and of course the artificial sweeteners that the essential lines do not have. They have stevia, no dyes and things like that. So you have this variety now, which is what we're so thankful for, to have the essentials line of baking soda toothpaste, that you have something with everything that we love as hygienists. So I was really glad to see that was introduced.
We had some samples from Midwinter with those ones. We've tried it as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about essentials. What other options are there, though, as far as the line that Arm & Hammer has for baking soda toothpaste?
We have a variety of toothpaste. They are the Advanced White and Advanced White Extreme Whitening. The Advanced White is 50% baking soda and 1% hydrogen peroxide. So there again, you're back to that hydrogen peroxide and baking soda working together better than each alone. And it's balanced. The Complete Care, which is one of our, it's one I use, it has the RDA is 53. Again, the same 50% baking soda, 1% hydrogen peroxide. Has a little strengthening. We have a sensitive formula, sensitive teeth and gums, which has the 5% potassium nitrate, the same as most other sensitive formulas, but it comes in at an RDA at 57, and the pH of that is 8.2. Nice. ProxiCare, one of my favorites. I used it as Profi Paste. Why do we use Profi Paste? I don't know. I always say this, and it's my opinion only. But it has an RDA of 35. That's one of the lowest. Again, 50% baking soda, 1% hydrogen peroxide. It leaves people, especially after, say you have done scaling and root planing, but they want to taste good when they leave. Use something that's really gentle and giving a little peroxide for into those pockets. And one of our original, it's called Dental Care. It's has the ADA seal of acceptance. It's one of our original toothpaste, and it's 65% baking soda. So it's one of the highest of our baking sodas. It comes in at an RDA of 60. And the people say, well, if it's all baking soda, why is it higher than the hydrogen peroxide, the PeroxiCare? Again, you have to think of what your abrasives are. How much, the size, okay? How fast are you going to dilute or dissolve that with your saliva? So the baking soda crystals or last a little longer in your 2-minute brushing. Okay. But again, they dissolve, unlike sand or glass or so. So really, I tell hygienists when they come up to us at the booth and we're explaining, we're all hygienists that work together. Some of us have worked together for 25 years, and read the inactive ingredients. We know what's the active ingredient. It's fluoride. And ours, of course, is sodium fluoride because it's a salt and we're a salt, baking soda. So you can't have a stannous fluoride work with. It neutralizes it. The salt neutralizes it. So again, think about reading the back of the box. Think about your patient's needs. A great universal toothpaste. People say, well, can't I just use it out of the box? Yeah, but you're not getting the fluoride. Let us do the work for you. Okay. We'll put the fluoride in. We'll put all the flavoring in. I think because also the essential baking soda toothpaste is 35% as opposed to 50 or more. It does have, if you have the patient come back and say, oh, I just couldn't stand that baking soda taste, the essentials would be the one to go to, where you're getting the same benefits of neutralizing acids, remineralization without that baking soda. But I can't go back to the kid's sweet, bubbly toothpaste anymore.
No.
It's just amazing. Another just funny story. When I did retire, and I'd been at this office 9 years, it's a general office, a lot of implants and a lot of things going on there. But the hygienist took my place and said, this job is so boring. Everybody's teeth are so clean. Nice. I said, they all use their Arm & Hammer, and they could see the difference. They really could see the difference.
So I would love to finish up and chat about the spin brush, because Arm & Hammer also has the battery-powered spin brush, right?
Correct. We all know that any kind of power brush is going to work better than a manual brush. People just tend to use it longer. Kids just love the characters that we have with our spin brushes. There's been a study showing that they will brush longer with the brush. It does not have a timer on it. It is, as I said, an affordable brush. You can get it at any grocery store, Walmart, anything like that. But the research has shown that 70% of plaque in the hard-to-reach areas with a spin brush. There's a couple different types of models. One has a cup head that it oscillates, and it's like a Profi cup. It has a little depression in the center to help hold your toothpaste to the tooth a little bit longer as you go around. The bottom part of the spin brush is the top is oscillating, the bottom is reciprocating. So it's a dual action to the brushes. They're all battery powered. You can take them anywhere, use them anywhere. Power goes out in your house or wherever you're on vacation, you can still use your brush. And that's one of the other things that I didn't mention about baking soda. Because it dissolves into the plaque, it will actually reach into the hard to reach places, say the linguals of your posterior molars, where other toothpaste has to be brushed onto the tooth. The baking soda will dissolve into your saliva and actually work even if you didn't brush there. And that's a key point. That's part of that dual modality of it, mechanically and biologically. So even if you're not reaching with your spin brush in the back of the teeth, the baking soda is dissolving around the tooth and affecting that bacteria. But I love the spin brush. I mean, I became a fan when we started traveling, and it's a great brush. It has a larger handle. My office that I just retired from was across the street from a nursing facility, different levels of care. And the older patients loved the bigger handle. It's easier, especially even for kids, as opposed to a skinnier handle. It's easier to turn on and off. But it's a great brush. It really, really works. You know, there's research behind them. So the other thing about the spin brush, besides, you know, that it's battery powered and it's going to work way better than any kind of manual brush. As I said, it removes 70%. Research has shown, than a manual brush. But it also, because of that oscillating motion, it actually helps to whiten. Again, it's the mechanical action of it. The head is designed with the two different motions to reach interproximal. Some of the bristles on the ProClean model actually have a thinner edge to them. So they're a little longer, a little thinner edge. And all the bristles have a darker bristle. They might be blue. It's an indicator bristle saying that, okay, you've used this now for 3 months. It's time to, the bristles are starting to fray and break down. It's time to, so there's an indication of when to change them. I would say if you really want to learn anything more about baking soda, and believe me, I've been studying it for years and years and years. The oralcarepro.com, which, again, there are 4.5, almost 5 units of CE on there, all free. The codes are on there. You can read up on this, read the research of what's behind what I'm saying, and just talk to your patients. Be that detective, be that educator, and be that prescriber. As Michelle said, we are dental hygiene assessors and dental hygiene prescribers for what our patients need.
Absolutely love that.
That was great.
Linda, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I'm sure our listeners are going to want to reach out to you. How can they contact you? What's the best way?
They can reach me at Linda Hirce. My last name is HIRCE.RDH@gmail.com. And I'd be free to, happy to answer any kind of questions and let them know how they can order samples for their office as well.
Awesome. I loved it. Thank you again for being here. This was absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Really was.